Thank you. Good afternoon. And I'm the CEO of PetVivo Holdings. There's a lot of information on this PowerPoint, so I'm going to go extremely fast. This PowerPoint is also available on our website, so we meet all the Reg FD requirements. We trade under the symbol PETV on NASDAQ. There are forward-looking statements within this presentation. So basically, we developed a protein particle matrix that mimics cartilage and tissue. It has multiple applications within the companion animal space as well as in the human space. So the particles is a patented technology. We call it osteocushion technology, and the initial product is for the treatment of is for the use in the osteoarthritis market, and we call it Spring. So it's a very disruptive and effective tool in the treatment or in the use of osteoarthritis. The product sells into an $11 billion companion animal veterinary care market. And it's just not specifically for osteoarthritis. It's also for other joint afflictions and in certain cases for rehab. So after surgery, doctors have used the product to increase the rehab time of dogs and horses. So we are classified as a veterinary device. And the human side of the market, we're classified as a medical device. So we didn't have to do any regulatory work on the veterinary side of the FDA. We got an automatic sale and marketing process. So Spring that is actually comprised of natural particles. So it's basically collagen, elastin, and heparin, which is the building block of cartilage. And these particles are injected into the joint, and from that point, it actually creates a scaffolding. So we sell this directly to the veterinary doctors. And right now, the two applications are for dogs and horses. We'll have a cat product coming online. The vets are able to really derive high revenues from this because it's a product that they're not used to getting the type of margins, the markups. And for the pet owners, we provide quite a bit of benefit, and the cost is relatively low to the other treatment protocols. We have a very deep patent portfolio, 10 U.S., 9 foreign, and 9 or 10 pending. And we talked about we don't need FDA clearance on the veterinary side because of all the human clinical work. And the management team is very seasoned, experienced, and an active board of directors. So the opportunity that presents us is within the OA space. It's a $11 billion veterinary care product sales market. It's the fastest growing segment. So osteoarthritis is basically the bone-on-bone contact, the wear and away of cartilage. Affects about 14 million dogs in the United States and about 1 million horses. So our product is through an intra-articular injection, but the problem is that it just degrades over time. So it doesn't get better. And the current solution or the treatments that are out there all focus on symptoms. They never focus on the root cause of the problem. So the first standard type of treatment is the use of NSAIDs. NSAIDs have multiple side effects. Potential GI bleeding, prolonged use will cause liver and kidney damage. Also, it does nothing to slow down the degrading of the cartilage. And actually, I argue that it speeds up the process of degrading cartilage because when the dog has pain, it probably won't run and jump. But if you're masking that pain, it's going to run and jump and it'll tear even more cartilage. The next treatment protocol generally is steroids or hyaluronic acid. Expensive, slow-acting, and very short in duration. After each injection, actually, it tends to lose its efficacy. The next round is stem cells, PRP, joint treatment. You got to draw blood, you got to harvest tissue. It's very time-sensitive, time-consuming, expensive, and once again, it's focused on symptoms and not the root cause of the problem. We feel the optimal solution is Spring with osteocushion technology. Spring, basically, these particles are derived from collagen, elastin, and heparin building blocks of cartilage. It's put into the joint from a veterinary doctor using an intra-articular injection, which they're trained to do already in vet school, but a lot of them forget how to do it. But literally, you can go to YouTube and punch out intra-articular injection, and there will be a vet that will show you how to do the injections. But obviously, we're selling this to vets because it's FDA regulated. It's an FDA product. We say it lasts at least 12 months, and that's because our human studies track the humans for 12 months. In the real world, we have seen it last well beyond 12 months. And in some cases, in birth defect situations with joints, we have one dog going on 8 years. With the use of our spring product or particles, we're finding out you don't really have to use NSAIDs or anything else to supplement and augment along the way. Very effective and economical solution for the management of OA. So we are a veterinary medical device, and the standard syringe is 2 milliliters or 2 cc's of product and 3 cc syringe. It's injected right into the joint, and from there we build a scaffold. So we didn't have to do any animal studies because of all the data we had on the human side. So we did a 145-person human study using the particles as a dermafil, and on the bottom you will see the clinicaltrials.gov site. So if you wanted to go see the exact results, it's because of that trial we got the designation on the human side as a medical device, and that's why we can sell right in. Huge patent portfolio. So the mechanism of action with our product is purely mechanical. So the majority of products out there are biologic or pharmaceutical. So if you look at the image on top, it's just basically bone-on-bone contact. You get inflammation, you get heat, and you get pain. The image below it is after the injected particles of spring into the joint. You can see it's forming a scaffolding. So in essence, it's like hundreds and thousands of small sponges that's been injected into the joint that's separating the bone from bone-on-bone contact. These particles are really wet and lubricious. So every time the dog runs or jumps, it's actually lubricating the joint, cooling down the joint, does what natural cartilage is supposed to do. Hope is it was a 9-month-old golden doodle, had a birth defect of its left hip. The orthopedic surgeon said at year 1, we're going to operate to try to fix the problem because its left leg really didn't have much usage. I said to the owner, let's just try spring and see what happens. Well, we injected the left hip. Probably within 3 weeks, the dog started running in balance and the legs became pretty balanced. And it's been 8 years on a single injection. The dog is still running perfectly like it never had an issue. And some of the people probably know Chris Catone. He runs a Green Tree Financial in Plantation, Florida. And he just goes, it's amazing what it's still doing. And I told him, the dog's probably getting to the age where it's going to have other issues. So you probably want to have your vet injected it again. Fender Bender is a racehorse out of Minneapolis at Canterbury Park. So the owner asked me, if I wanted to test the product out, what would I look for? I said, if you look for a racehorse that had very good race times, but it suffered a lameness injury and never came back, really recovered. So he went out, found this horse, Fender Bender, claimed it for $3,000. We injected 4 different joints, or actually his vet injected 4 different joints within the horse. And 2 weeks later, it started in a race where it tripped and it was 10 lengths behind everyone and proceeded to catch everyone and win the race. And the announcer happens to be the color man for the Minnesota Vikings. So he's going from the outhouse to the penthouse. And it's a cool video on our website. It's really funny. But beyond that, it allowed the horse to run better, faster. The trainer told me the biggest thing was the recovery time between races. It used to take 3 weeks before you could train for the next race. Now it's 3 days. Also, they didn't have to tap the joint after every race or so because there would be fluid buildup and they have to drain the fluid. On the single injection for the year, they didn't have to do it. And most of the race horses and performance horses, they inject once a year. It's as a preventive because it's extremely inexpensive relative to what they would be spending on a season basis. So we've injected over, well, it's probably closing in on 1,000 animals and had very good outcomes. Once again, we're targeted on the affliction and not symptoms. All the other treatments are focused on symptoms, biologic and pharmaceutical. We have a definite price-cost advantage, ease of application. We can treat multiple joints at the same time without any adverse issues. It says we treated 800. I think we're closer to 1,000 right now. So here's the chart of the spectrum of various treatments for osteoarthritis. So you can see the pros, cons, the annual costs. Our cost is actually, as a device, we're covered by pet insurance. And every one of these are focused on symptoms. And for the last 15, 20 years, every company has focused on trying to get a better NSAID or better outcomes from stem cells. And if you look at joint replacement, that is extremely expensive. But what some of the orthopedic surgeons have been using our product has, after surgery, they inject the joint that just had the surgery because it stabilizes it and helps it recover much faster. They're also injecting the bilateral joint because 80% of the bilateral joint will fail from the stress of the joint replacement on one side. So we're finding it has a lot of benefits in that in preventing future costs. And I think one category that we will be creating is left of joint replacement. I would call joint life extension. So that is when a vet says, okay, we probably have to do surgery. We can do that injection. I believe we can prolong the life of that joint 2-3 years and put off the joint replacement. So it could be a cost savings.
Are those costs per joint?
Yeah, correct. But, you know, the thing is, it's a 2 cc syringe, and that's generally for an 85-pound lab, but also depending which joint you're doing. The hock is only less than 1 cc, so you can inject both hocks with one syringe. And on horses, it varies. And surprisingly, horses is not much more in terms of the particles, even though they're such a bigger animal. They don't. Go ahead, Tony.
Does the product migrate? Does it come out of the joint slippery?
No, because it forms a matrix and then a scaffolding, and it basically naturally fills in the area where you used to have cartilage or damage. And I'll let John Dolan, because he had to he had to argue with the FDA. John, you want to come up here and speak into the microphone so people can hear you? Yeah. Move a little faster, or I'm going to inject you. I know.
Sorry, I need the product myself. I don't spring quite as quickly as I used to. Tony, it's a great question. Basically, what you've got is when you're injecting into a synovial joint, it's injected into the synovial capsule. And so that capsule, this is not a liquid that will come out. The particle sizes are large enough to keep it maintained in that capsule. And so what happens is that you inject millions of particles into the joint. They work in conjunction with each other. If you've had a pillow before that had this small foam sort of particles or sections in it, what these particles do is they'll aggregate together and they'll fill in all the gaps in the joint, creating that cushion between the bone. So to answer your question. Usually no. Our belief is that what happens is it does stay separate. What we've seen in vitro is that they do stay separate, but they do work in conjunction with each other. They're in a confined space. And so if you've got enough of those in, what we're seeing is that they'll align that section of cartilage or bone, and then what they'll do is they'll recreate that cushion again. Excuse me?
It was a human question, so.
Oh. Go ahead, John.
So probably within 12 months, we'll file an IDE, indication of drug exemption, or device exemption, sorry. And so most of the work that was done prior to us going into the animals was funded by NIH on the human side. So all of our clinical data is related towards the human market. But when I came into the company, I said, with all that data, we're just going right into the animals and not have to do any clinical research. So that's where we're at. I'm going to go fast because, we're limited in time. Okay. So spring, the trials we have, and this is purely for marketing because everything was on the animal side. So we completed a equine tolerance study with Oklahoma City Equine. That was done in December of 2021. Colorado State University, Dr. Felix Dewar is considered one of the world's top experts on pain management for small animals. Our timetable got thrown off there with COVID. People couldn't bring their dogs back to the university during that time, so they reopened up 3 months ago. So we're anticipating that study to be done around fourth quarter of 2022. And in the meantime, we also started a couple of private group studies. Ethos is very well known. They're probably the largest in the private sector for doing clinical research. And we expect that third quarter of 2022. So the production strategy, what we have done is we've created an extremely scalable production facility that can do large volumes. So we're also approved in the human medical device area using ISO 5, 7, and 8 certifications. We didn't have to do that on the animal side, but because of our production expertise and everything, has always been on the human side. Our production team is second to none. So this facility can do 500,000 syringes a year. That's top line revenue of about $125 million. And to duplicate and double that within our current space, it would be a CapEx of $200,000, 120 days, and we can go to 1 million syringes and $250 million top line. Great CapEx return. We have a very comprehensive, extensive IP portfolio, 10 U.S., 9 foreign, very broad claim language. And the reason we know that is examiner citation over 150, applicant citation over 250, but beyond that, the protocols and protections we have in place for trade secrets is much more important because other companies have tried to do what we're doing, and when they compress these matrices, it turns into powder. Ours stays wet, and we're able to inject it into the system, and it stays wet all the way through.
John, what are your patents in?
It varies because we keep the file open, so we know how to just keep extending. So, John, before having me come into the company was a U.S. patent litigator in the microbiology area, and then he was the senior partner at Frederickson Byron, second largest law firm in Minneapolis, and he handled the mergers and acquisitions for Medtronic technology licenses, and he wrote the first drug-eluting stints for Simonix, Johnson & Johnson, so he knows this area inside out, so we know how to keep adding. But beyond that, the trade secrets or the process is even more important. So I talked about multiple applications that does not require any FDA work. The first 5 on there is basically we can go at any time. It's just a matter of getting acquisition of the small animal vets because it takes them a little longer because when they inject the dog, they don't see the dog for 6 months to a year. And then they realize this works and then they just keep adding more. On the equine side, we've been getting mostly race horses, rodeo horses. They see them right away and then they add the product much quicker. Mucoadhesive device. This is a wafer that allows you to go through the mucoadhesive membrane that delivers any agent right into the bloodstream. So you get 5 to 10x the bioavailability. Example, you take a vitamin C tablet, 500 milligrams, you're absorbing 7% into the bloodstream. We can use 50 milligrams, put it right into the rooftop of the mouth, and you're getting way more, and you can control the delivery. So think about it in the area of oncology. We can deliver oncology drugs right into the bloodstream in a very controlled setting. You won't get toxicity spikes. You won't have any of the side effects. So we'll be adding a product to the equine space and canine and so on, probably a CBD approach or something like that. Market overview, U.S. pet spend in 2019 was $97 billion. In 2020 was $103 billion. The sector is growing at 5.4%. Recession-proof. We got demographic tailwinds. Less and less people are getting married. Less and less people are having children. And because of that, they're willing to spend whatever it takes to keep their pets as they treated their pets as children. Veterinary care and product, the category we're in, is the fastest growing area within this segment of pet spend. It's $11 billion, probably growing at about a 7.4% clip. 68% of all households own a pet, and actually with COVID, it's over 70%. Here's a metrics that really shows you the humanization of the pet. So in this case, it's a dog. In 2012, the dollar amount that a consumer was going to stop spending would be $1,700 before treating their animal. In 2020, it's $10,700. So you can see that tremendous growth in that number. Pet insurance is a major tailwind for us. In 2016, there was 1.8 million pet owners that had pet insurance. In 2020, 3.45. The growth rate, annual average growth rate, is 24.4%. So it's about 3.5% of the market have pet insurance, and that's growing much faster because you got companies like Trupanion partnering up with Chewy for Chewy to sell pet insurance. You got Lemonade that's selling pet insurance. You got State Farm that allows you to put a rider on your homeowner's policy to get pet insurance. So since our product is reimbursed as a device, we feel that's a major advantage and tailwind for us. So the industry is also ripe for innovation like ours from the standpoint is that disruptiveness that we're targeting the actual cause and everyone else is treating the symptoms. And, you know, it's a plus and minus side because you got veterinary doctors that come out of vet school. Once you diagnose osteoarthritis, it's a multimodal approach for the life of the animal. You're giving steroids, you're giving stem cells. It's hard to tell. You do a single injection, you don't see the dog for a year, and then you determine if you need to do another injection. Now, out of the 800 animals, only one dog had a second injection. We thought it was user error to begin with because the vet barely used hardly any particles. And then after the second injection, it's been 5 years and the dog's running 5 miles a day without a single issue. Management team, we have a very seasoned management team with all of us over 30 years or 25 years of experience within the medical technology area. Bob Folks, my CFO, Taxel Medical. That company went from 10 million market cap to 1.8 billion. He beat 11 straight quarters of analyst forecasts. Piper took that company public. Randy Meyer was the CEO of Taxel Medical. He's my chief operating officer, knows manufacturing inside out. He helped build the sales team at Taxel. John Dolan, I talked about his background. Greg Cash, he ran the CRM division in Medtronic in Asia. Josh Wilhelm, he's a production guy from Medtronic, Schultz Diabetes. He has expertise, and his team has really rolled the product out to large volume production. And the rest of the guys we can see on website, I'm getting the hook here on time. So we're going to, expand the sales force because in this situation, the regulatory risk is very low. Manufacturing, nobody questions our ability to scale and increase margins. So now it's blocking and tackling of the sales team. Our sales team is like the superstars of the industry. Mark Middleton basically was president Animal Health International from like zero sales to 800 million a year, launched that. And then if you look at our recent hires, each one of them are superstars from Covetrus. Rachel, she's the second in charge of national sales, multi-billion-dollar annual sales. Cliff and David Gregory. So we continue to do that as regional sales reps. So we're starting to add on. We're going to add on a few more salespeople. Now we're allowing our key opinion leaders to basically start talking about the product at major conferences. So the ground game is our in-house salespeople, and then as these studies come out and get published, we'll be able to get into the major distributors because that's what they want to see. They have a legal department that says, we don't care if you have a human study that's way more intense and way more meaningful. You need a pet study. So all those studies we're doing is not for regulatory, it's for marketing. And I'm just going to finish it and open up the Q&A.
John, when you scale manufacturing down the road, will cost per unit come down significantly? And do you have a vision of what kind of margins you want? What's your scale?
Well, if you think about the syringe, what's in there? It's 98% saline. Okay, so you can get a general idea what kind of margins we have. Okay.
So, two-part question. Why are you getting an IDE and not a 510K? That device is accredited?
Well, IDE allows you to go for a 510K or a PMA.
Okay.
Yeah, so you have to do that first.
Second part, if you're going to get human approval, you could start a new sales force for that, or you can license it?
The strategy is, I've done this in the past. Once we go to a certain point, I'm going to negotiate partnerships in the human side, or we spin off the human side as a separate company on NASDAQ. And if you look at what we have in the clinical trials, I've seen companies come out with a lot less than we have, 300 million market cap. Okay? So I would do a $50 million raise, give up 30% of the company, and I would have a war chest on the pair and never have to do an offering on PetVivo Holdings. Okay? Yeah. Except the sales team. They're all vets. And marketing. Russ comes from BI and Zoetis, #1 and #2 largest marketing firm. And our large animal vet, Dr. Joe Manning, was the senior vet at Merck Animal Health for 27 years where they launched multiple products. Any more questions? Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.